Hansel and Gretel, but it's 2020. By Ocean. It was a typical summer holiday Saturday for Jimmy and Nicolette. They were just having fun playing Roblox together, as their dad left really early for work and they had done all their homework, so there was nothing to stop them. You see, their father was an average man, but they managed to live. Their dad was an accountant and worked all day long, so Jimmy and Nicolette rarely saw him. He was only there for them only on Sunday. One day, their father hired a nanny to look after them. This nanny only worked for the money and didn't like Jimmy and Nicolette. She hated them, but still managed to hide this from their father. Days passed, and Sunday finally arrived. Their dad was dead tired from work but still was really happy and cheerful as he played with Jimmy and Nicolette. They had so much fun playing Roblox, drawing stuff, creating stuff and animating the whole day. They both are really good kids and are pretty good in school too. Now, Dad accidentally left one of his AirPods in Jimmy and Nicolette's room. The two kids hid it from him, and well, Dad looked everywhere for it, but couldn't find it. The kids had the best plan to give it as a birthday present, as his birthday was in 2 days' time. One day, while Jimmy and Nicolette were supposed to be in bed, they heard a buzzing sound coming from their secret drawer. It was the AirPod. It was buzzing like crazy. Then it stopped, and then there was a voice. They knew that voice very well. It was their nanny, screaming at their dad. "I've had enough of this," she screamed through the call. "I demand more pay. I do all the housework for you, and I deserve more. If you don't pay me, I quit." "No, please. Please don't quit. I need you to look after them," pleaded their dad. "No. I've had enough of those two brats. I'm not," screamed the nanny. Jimmy and Nicolette were shocked. They never expected their nanny to be rude to them. What have they done? What did Jimmy and Nicolette do to deserve to be brats? The fight continued up for a long time, and well, Dad agreed to pay more. He was running short. He needed the money, but he also needed the nanny. He couldn't survive, being a single dad with two young kids. Nicolette burst into tears. What did they do to deserve that? Jimmy consoled her. Jimmy wanted to test the nanny, and see if she actually was that mean to them, as she had never shown any signs of anger or happiness before. It was finally Wednesday. Nanny had arrived to take care of them, and Dad had left home really early for accounting. Jimmy and Nicolette were a bit terrified, as they were scared, as they thought the nanny would harm them. Nothing like that happened throughout the day. She just acted normal. Not a glint of anger, nor happiness, or any other emotion of the sort. She was plain blank, but deep down, Jimmy knew that she was really angry. They'd usually go out to the skate park, as Jimmy loves to skateboard and Nicolette has a lovely new pink scooter. Jimmy had many friends in the park, so he was really excited to meet them. Their nanny left them, and told she would be back to pick them back at 6:00 p.m. Dad would usually come around 12:00 am, so it was quite early. The skateboard park was awesome. Jimmy had so much fun playing with his friends, riding, jumping, doing trick shots and many more. Nicolette also had fun, as she also had some friends hanging around, and she wanted to try out her new scooter. Time passed really quickly, and well, it was now around 5:00 p.m. They both sat down and then had a tiny rest. They talked about all their cool trick shots and things they did and witnessed. They then took a stroll. Time passed. They sat down and waited. They waited. The time was now 6:30 p.m., and still there was no sign of Nanny. Nicolette was frightened. She hated the dark, and it was really late. Jimmy decided to call her, but she wouldn't respond. He knew that there was no use in calling her dad, so Jimmy waited a few more minutes. The time was 7:00 p.m. Now, it was really dark. The children were scared. Jimmy, however, had a genius idea. He took out his phone and turned on their GPS, and well, tried to go home. They lived quite far from the park, but luckily, they had their skateboards and scooters. Jimmy's phone's battery was low, so they had to move fast. Too bad Nicolette didn't have a phone, as her father couldn't buy one for her, and well, she was too young. At least, that was the excuse. They traveled along the road, alone, scared, but still together. Jimmy led the way, and Nicolette followed. It was quite dark, but luckily, the street lamps were on. They had thought that the nanny had gone away, so there wouldn't be any dinner, and they didn't know how to cook. They were all out of cup noodles, and that was the only thing they knew how to make. They were really hungry, and didn't have any money. They soon reached home, traveling about 3 hours. The time was 10:00 p.m. and it was really dark. They had no house keys, as the nanny had them. The bad news was, she wasn't there. There was no one there. Jimmy and Nicolette were horrified. How could their nanny do that to them? That was way beyond torture. Now, they were trapped outside the house till 12:00 am. They were desperate. It was then that Jimmy had another idea. He remembered he watched one of Unspeakable's videos where they tried to break an unbreakable box. It was really stupid, actually, but they did a lot of damage with a scooter. Now, that was an unbreakable box, but in Jimmy's house, they had really weak glass. He sprang into action. They couldn't wait till 12:00 am, so Jimmy grabbed Nicolette's scooter and whacked it at the glass window. The glass shattered instantly. Pieces flew in all directions. Luckily, the window was pretty large, so they were able to slide into the house without getting a cut. After a few agonizing tries, they finally seeped through it. Phew. They were safe at last. Jimmy thought of complaining to his dad, so they tried their best to stay awake. They patched up the glass window, and rested. They were used to staying up late, and they normally wouldn't fall asleep. Then they decided to see if there was anything they could eat. It was then that they found it, 2 freshly made sandwiches on their kitchen top. The children were happy. They finally had something to eat. Without thinking, the children gobbled up the food. It was delicious. They then went to bed, and just tried to wait till their dad came home to tell him about everything that happened. They waited, and were soon, unexpectedly, feeling really tired. How could they be tired? They were never tired. Well, little did they know that their nanny had made the sandwiches. She had dumped some sleeping pill powder in the sandwiches. The children didn't notice a thing. They decided to play some Roblox, not knowing what had just happened. Before they knew it, they were completely knocked out. The next morning arrived quickly, and Dad came home and went. They weren't able to tell Dad, as he left really early, as usual. They felt really drowsy, due to the long-term sleeping pills. They still were out of cup noodles. Dad had forgotten to buy them. They did nothing that day, just stayed in bed. Their nanny wasn't there, as home, but she had prepared breakfast, lunch and dinner for them, all containing loads of that drug. Jimmy and Nicolette had their breakfast, hoping to get some energy. But it only made matters worse. They grew even weaker. They didn't like it at all. It was then that Jimmy realized that something was wrong. He then realized it was coming from the food. The nanny was trying to poison them. They were terrified now. They didn't even look at any more food, nor touch anything new. They were that scared. Jim put his phone to charge, just in case there was an emergency. They then tried dialing their dad. No luck. They were worried sick. Just then, Jimmy got a message from the local news station. It said, "Beware of the new drug, the SleepX 2020. It is a really dangerous drug that weakens you and makes you highly drowsy. If consumed 3 times, could lead to death." Jimmy was horrified. His insides grew weak. Nicolette was already knocked out. Jimmy tried to dial 911, but he couldn't. His whole body turned green and he was out too. In a few seconds. That was it. They didn't feel anything for about an hour or so. They were then woken up by some rumbling sounds. Really heavy rumbling. They were in a car. And it wasn't just any old car, it was their nanny's car. The car was headed straight to a cliff. Jimmy and Nicolette were both tied up, and couldn't move. Jimmy somehow tried to bite through the tape that was holding him, but it didn't work. He and Nicolette were stuck. The nanny parked the vehicle so that the boot was facing the edge of the cliff, with about 5 feet to spare. The nanny laughed an evil laugh, and scared the children. They were hopeless. They couldn't call the police because they were strapped up. Jimmy had another brilliant idea. He used his own sweat to try and loosen the rope. He did it. It was loose, but he didn't want the nanny to notice it. The nanny had brought a huge, heavy brick with her. She got out of the car and placed the brick on the accelerator. What she didn't know was that she had forgotten to put it in reverse mode, and she was standing right in front of the vehicle. The car zoomed away from the cliff. There was an agonizing scream, and the nanny was crushed to death. The children were frightened. The car soon broke down and came to a smoky stop. Jimmy immediately ripped of the tape, and called 911. They came to the rescue. Apparently, the nanny wasn't crushed to death, but had both of her legs crushed and had to be amputated. What a day! A few months had passed, and Jimmy, Nicolette and the nanny were on trial in court. By the time the whole world had gotten to know this, and supported Jimmy and Nicolette, Jimmy showed all the possible footage he knew, from hidden cameras, to audio recordings from his phone. The phone call to Dad and the food, which was tested, and claimed to be highly covered in that drug. The commercial building next to the cliff also shared a blurry camera footage of the car incident, and so did the car's dashboard camera. The nanny was legless, and she was sent to prison for 20 years, for poisoning small children with a highly illegal substance. In the end, Jimmy and Nicolette were fine, and, well, life was good. Yay, life was good. The end.